Alrighty, let's take a look at the Bone Fragment Bone Storm Demonspawn for Season 7, which does start on Friday, June 6th. The Bone Fragment is a fundamental arcane spell used by the Demonspawn in Hero Siege, designed for damage through rapid spellcasting. Upon casting, the skill fires a spread of bone-like arcane projectiles, dealing consistent arcane damage in a frontal cone. Let's look at what that looks like here, right? Bone Fragments. So you can see we toss them. They go out in front of us, and whenever you hit enemies with them, you see that our augment's going to put this circle around them that will spin and do damage. We also have a cartilage buildup, right? That's going to proc on them as well, which is really nice. And just to give you kind of a demonstration on really how the whole build works, we also have Bone Storm. Bone Storm is just a active that we're going to leave up. This is going to apply a bunch of arcane break for us. Super easy. We also have a buff with our blood bolts. This is going to send a wave through, and while we're on top of this, we also get a damage buff from that, right? And with our impale, we also get the ability to inflict stasis, burn, and bleeding. So we have a lot of different debuffs that we can proc on monsters, which is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Just give you a real quick shook. It's kind of hard to showcase this character while we are actually out and about, as our Bone Storm is going to kind of like one tap everything. And generally speaking, Bone Storm's okay to farm with, right? If you're just like teleporting around, Bone Storming and Bone Fragments and throwing those on monsters. But honestly, while you're generally farming, once you get enough gear, you can really just run Blood Surge. And this is a really long tendril. Right, it's this really long, thick tendril, and this will chain between monsters, right? And it feels really good once you are able to get into some gear to make that work. But just to give you a quick example of kind of how all this works, right? So we make sure to proc our Bone Storm. This is going to give us all of our arcane break, right? We have our potions up. Make sure we debuff everything. I'm on the wrong skill. Hang on. Everything's up. There we go. So you can see all of these are just going to stack on top of each other. Close enough, right? It does giga damage. It's a little bit hard to simulate what this would be like for single target simply because of the hitboxes and how they function, right? I'm not going to be able to shotgun all of these the same way, right? So the larger the monster is, the more damage that you're ultimately going to do with this skill, right? It's kind of weird on how the dummies are registering these hits. Like, it's not actually showing their shotgunning potential correctly, right? So just a heads up. If you're trying to simulate the DPS on the build, then you're going to need to go to an actual boss to do that. Okay, so let's look at some of the pros and cons of the Boner Demonspawn. Very easy to level. Bone Storm, you get that at level 8. You zoom with it. You have insane single target potential with even just budget gear, just based on how all the mechanics work with Bone Fragments. You also have a built-in movement speed, defense, and mana shield buff. Mana shield is kind of OP, right? You're going to proc that. You get a shield over your mana, so you take damage. Part of it goes towards your mana, which is really nice. And then you also have one of the best auras in the game for damage. This is Ominous Aura. This thing is cracked, right? This gives you arcane skill damage. It's a very high percentage of it. It affects you and your party. Now, as far as cons go, we have no built-in movement ability at all. We do get that movement speed on a passive. We're not going to be dumping points into it. So until we get a lot of plus skills, we're not really going to feel the movement speed, which means you're going to need to get a source of teleport for the build in order to farm with it efficiently. You also have no direct damage reduction outside of Mana Shield. You're really not getting any physical damage reduction or magic skill reduction. You're going to have to build into that through your gearing. As well as this build, you saw it can be a little bit laggy, especially if you get a ton of FCR. This character, believe it or not, this character only has 65 FCR. Right, and there's definitely ways that we could proc into more FCR to be able to cast these Bone Fragments way more often. So because of just how they function, it can cause a little bit of lag if you're not killing monsters quickly. And then you also are going to compete with arcane gear that's widely used, right? There are a lot of arcane casters in Hero Siege, so unfortunately, this build is going to be fighting for some of that gear with other people. Right. Let's talk about the skill trees and how we're going to level the character. Like I said, we don't get access to Bone Fragment until level 8. This is going to be our main leveling ability, as well as we do get Bone Fragments at level 1, so that's kind of nice. That's what we're going to be using until we hit level 8. Once we hit level 8, we are going to be respecking our skill tree out, dumping everything into Bone Storm, just simply because Bone Storm by itself, without this augment, you just press it one time, it goes, right? It has a duration. Whenever the duration ends, it goes down, but you have, look at all this uptime, right? Makes it really, really nice. You can just continue re-upping the skill whenever it drops, and you just walk through enemies and they die. The downside to it is you are in a little bit of melee range. If you kill a bunch of monsters, but you didn't kill the elite, and like the monsters around the elite have death effects, you're going to be standing in death effects. So you do have to play a little bit safe in that regard. But once you get the damage on it, especially once you get to the augment, you will be blasting with it. It's not a big deal. At level 16, over here on the far right, we have a demonic presence. This is going to give you arcane skill damage as a more damage multiplier. This isn't just directly increased damage, it is more damage. So we do want to pump into that. This is going to give us the most amount of damage for our Bone Storm. And then if you like to put 1 point into Mana Devour, if you end up running out of mana, if you're using like other skills, or you just have a really expensive Bone Storm and not a lot of mana, this can be a way for you to be able to regen some of your mana back. At level 24, we're going to continue blasting into Bone Storm and Demonic Presence. We also put 1 point to Ominous Aura, right? This is going to give us that group aura. Might as well activate it. Even 1 point gives you a decent percentage. And then this will affect anybody in your party if you're playing with other people. At level 40, finally get access to our Bone Storm augment. Honestly, in terms of the Bone Storm augment, a lot of these feel really good. I personally I like this one. Whoop, if I can show it to you here. This top right one, I just like being able to press it one time and being able to walk through everything and not have to worry about it. However, this one does do 120% of the total damage, so it's not as big of a buff as maybe taking some of these others that will add like cyclones onto monsters. This one probably is one of the more damage options if you are trying to get the most out of the skill. But generally speaking, I like to go for the Everlasting Storm. It just feels very comfy. Alternatively, at level 40, you could swap into Blood Surge. You saw me kind of using that at the beginning of the video. That's that line ability. This is actually really, wrong one. This is actually really nice for farming with. You can stay pretty ranged. You have a bunch of tendrils that'll pump out everywhere just from the sub-skill tree here. We'll talk about the sub-skill trees. But this can be a good option at level 40 as well to farm with, right? I do have a skill tree kind of showing what that would look like. So assuming that we're going the Bone Storm route, we'll just continue pumping Bone Storm, get your Demonic Presence maxed out, get your Ominous Aura maxed out, right? And then we're just going to start putting points into cartilage buildup. And then finally at level 100, here's what our final Bone Fragments tree will look like, right? This is where we're using most of our points into Bone Fragments, cartilage buildup, Demonic Presence, Ominous Aura. We have 1 point down for like Blood Surge and Tendrils to proc Burning. Right, this is a really good way to get burning on monsters. We have our Mana Devour to keep up our mana. We have Impale. This will inflict burning, stasis, and bleeding for us on a smaller area than Blood Surge. And then we end up putting the rest of our points into Ossification. Right, for Blood Surge, we're going to be dumping into Blood Surge, into Blood Tendrils. These two are the main ones. Demonic Presence, Ominous Aura, right? Put 1 point over here into these 1 point wonders. Get your Mana Devour, right? So you can help with sustaining mana. And then if you want to put points into Bone Storm to get Arcane Break, at 1 point into Impale, this will help you with that debuff for helping you kill maybe tankier targets. But generally speaking, you're only going to be in the Blood Surge setup just to try and speed through with it, as it is a bit easier to kill monsters. It has a bunch of tendril proliferation all over the screen, so it's just easier to farm with than Bone Storm later on once you actually do get some gear. Now, sub-skill trees, if you're not familiar with them, these were added back in Season 5. You can press this plus sign. These will open up a window where you can assign your sub-skill trees. You might have seen me messing with those. You gain 1 point in the sub-skill tree for every 5 character levels, so you want to be sure you're using these while you are leveling. Here's what our bone fragment tree is going to look like. This is what's going to give us the additional projectiles, right? It also makes them circle around monsters, which is really cool. Right? Kind of saw us doing that a minute ago. For Bone Storm, top right augment, that's what makes it everlasting. We also get a bunch of arcane break. We inflict bleed with it, and we give it a bunch of area of effect. For Blood Bolts, we're only really taking this far right node. I don't use this that much. It does give you FCR. It gives you some movement speed. So until you get teleport, you could use this, right? Every few seconds. Gives you a 45% movement speed buff. Kind of nice. Impale, top left augment. It's the only one we use here, right? This is going to give us that infliction. You only really need to put 1 point into it. We're not using it as a source of damage. We're using it as a source of just debuffing and putting those ailments on monsters. So you really only need 1 point in it. And then from there, you can go for like arcane break and area of effect, that sort of thing. And then finally, here's our blood surge tree. This is what I use whenever I'm farming with blood surge, right? There's definitely some different setups, but the main one that you care about is this right here. This is going to give you the extra 10Ds. For attribute allocation, 2 points intelligence, 2 points vitality, enough energy to feel comfortable. This is good for while you're leveling. If you feel like you have enough tankiness, by all means, go for more damage. If you feel like you have enough damage, you need to be a bit tankier, get some vitality. But generally, while you're leveling, it's not get more vitality. It's you also need resistances. So it could just be a situation where you have no res and no amount of vitality is going to matter, right? So just be aware of that. This build can be mana intensive, especially if you're playing Blood Surge or you're proccing your Bone Fragments a lot. It can feel mana intensive. You do have that Mana Devour. Once you get some plus skills, that Mana Devour is going to restore so much mana. It's honestly, let me see if I can burn it out real quick. So you can see I got like no mana, right? Somewhere in there. Watch when I hit this Mana Devour. It's so much. Look at that. I'm full. It's 85%. It's literally a get out of jail free card. You hit that one time, you got your mana back. So you can't really run out of mana once you get some plus skills for Mana Devour. But until then, you might need some energy, especially whenever you're fighting some of the bosses, because you will be spamming your skill maybe a little bit more. So getting some energy in there can definitely help with those boss fights and be able to sustain through them. Now for gearing, we do have gearing for leveling 1 to 100, budget gear, mid-game gear, end-game gear. All that is in here. This will be available in the written guide that's on the website. But while you're leveling, there aren't any specific satanics that you need to stop to farm for. It's a waste of your time to try to go for satanic farming in the very beginning of the game. You are going to drop some. Great. If they work for your build, use them. If not, no worries, no harm, no foul. You can get through all of leveling without a single satanic. Now, there are rune words that you can make in Hero Siege. Really, the only part that you're trying to do here is get the bases, right? You will need 2 socket, 3 socket bases for certain things to be able to get through the leveling. That will help with leveling. Don't necessarily need them. So we're going to go through those different things and talk about them. But for leveling, generally speaking, your normal through mythic items, you're just looking for specific affixes that work for the build. Things like my music stopped playing. Not like this. Things like arcane skills, arcane skill damage, like flat damage, magic skill damage, movement speed, faster cast rate, life and mana on kill. All of these things are going to be really nice to get on normal through mythic items. If you can get multiple of these things on one item, that's fantastic. Generally speaking, you are going to get maybe one really good stat. Like you'll find something with arcane skill damage on it, and then you lucked out and it dropped on a ring that has faster cast rate as the implicit, right? And then you got life or replenish or whatever on it, right? That's generally what will happen. Those are perfectly fine. Sometimes you get lucky and you'll find an arcane ring with +1 skills, +2 skills, boots that have skills on them, a helmet that has skills on it. By all means, use those, right? Otherwise, there are some of those rune words I was talking about. Sky Song can be really nice. You get a bunch of FCR. FCR does become important to the build because we are casting our Bone Fragment a bit while we are leveling and during the early game. The same for Blood Surge. All of these names have B's at the start. Your Blood Surge, if you decide to switch into that and level with that, you will want to get some faster cast rate. It'll make a big difference in your overall clear and just how that build feels. So things like Sky Song can really help with that. For offhands, Divine Contemplation gives you tons of resistances. If you want more offense, you would go for a Sky Song. For chess pieces, Ankle Oxawana offers a ton of damage, and Shadow is really good. You can wear this as early as level 17. This will give you a bunch of more movement speed and FCR just to get through the game faster. And then, of course, boots. Quick Steps is something you can put on as early as level 31. Just look for any 2-socket pair of boots. Put a Yimdel in there. Very, very nice boots to be able to get through the game with. If you end up finding a Mal or a goal, you can downgrade your goal into a Mal. By all means, you can make a Ghost. You do get movement phasing. You get skills. This is more damage. This is more speed. Pick what you want there. Right. Otherwise, just be looking for any of these affixes on items. And don't forget about your charms. Your charms offer so much versatility to the build because of how many different affixes that you can get on them. You can get charms with 300 life, which is crazy. So don't skimp out on your charms. Now, once you hit level 100, let's talk about some of the budget gear here, right? There's not really best in slot gear, but there are a lot of different options that you could socket in and out just to make the build function work and get you through those early stages of the game so you can try and farm into the mid game. So I do have examples, right, of different things that we'll be using for the character. But honestly, this character, the Bone Fragments, has so much damage on it that it really doesn't matter what gear we're wearing in the early game to some extent. I personally prioritize things like teleport. I try to get Enigma as fast as possible, round down my resistance as quick as I can. Because in this character, you can focus more on your survivability because your damage should be taken care of with just how Bone Fragments works and how Bone Storm works. So, for weapons, we have things like Sky Song, Divinity. There's also Damien's Head, Sands of Time, Spiritwalker Guide, Celestis. You can try and make any of these rune words with additional like int based on level or intelligence. You can also get plus skills would be really nice, but you can just make them as is as well. Offhands, right? We still have that Divine Contemplation with all the resistances. If you are having trouble with res or you're dying a lot, that can really help with that. There's also Gem and Crested Tower. Also gets a ton of res with additional damage reduction on it. Can really help that early game. I love Gem and Crested Tower. I try to get it on pretty much every run for my characters. It's great. If you're having mana problems, or if you want to run Mana Shield, Rift Eye can be a good option here. This gives you up to 1250 mana, right? With a bunch of skills on it. It's really good for the Mana Shield Demonspawn. And then, of course, Sky Song, we have skills, FCR, that can be good on your offhand if you're just trying to get into a better option here, right? Because this doesn't provide you any real utility. And then lastly, Crematorium's Pledge. Because we get burn for free, especially for bossing, we can use Crematorium's Pledge. This will give us up to 60% extra damage to burning monsters. It does require quite a lot of runes in order to make this, so I personally wouldn't be burning burrs and jaws on crematoriums over getting that early Enigma, but this is a good option to maybe put on your back bar if you're able to get the runes early in the game. For helmets, you're probably in a Scholar or something like it. You can upgrade to any of these. They're great. I like Crown of the Midnight. But Witch's Brim hat having the pin on it is really good too. Chest pieces, Angle Oxawana. If you haven't made one yet, it's very strong. It's arguably stronger than most of these here. Gladstone can just offer you a shitload of res. Heaven's Might can also be really good with 6 sockets and 4 skills, but you kind of have to get a good roll for that one. And lastly, finding the runes for an Enigma can be extremely strong. For gloves, we have Wisdom Holds. These are up to +2. You get a bunch of FCR. Really, really nice. We want both of those things. Otherwise, there's a bunch of other options here if you end up picking them up. For boots, if you're on quick steps, now it's time to make Ghost, especially if you have teleport, right? Because you don't really care about the movement speed anymore. And same for Grand Wizards. I would only wear Grand Wizards if you have teleport because you just take such a massive movement speed penalty. For belts, Sash of the Magi, get that FCR, get that magic skill damage. You also get Mana Pool Aura. This just activates it on you. This will help with your mana replenish. There is also Gaze of the Void belt. This was buffed recently, right? This gives you up to 15 pin and a bunch of arcane skill damage and PDR. This thing is actually insane, right? This Gaze of the Void belt for arcane casters is actually insane. For rings, we have Coda Wedding Bands. These are really nice. Before you get teleport, you get the 40% movement speed. Wear a couple of those. Otherwise, you also have things like Iron Ring of Prometheus. This will give you a ton of extra cast rate. There's also Elven Graces. The crit doesn't work, but you get up to +2. Just something to get skills with would be fine. You could also just wear Mythic Rings that you get skillers on, right? I like Dark Lord Sigils for amulets. Up to 2 skills, tons of arcane skill damage, really good. You also get a bunch of flat, so very nice. Otherwise, Shining Pearl will be my next go-to. You just get so much magic skill damage, life, mana. It's really good. For charms, looking for flat arcane skill damage on your charms is really important. They did nerf the amount that you can get on charms, but it's going to make quite a big difference in your overall DPS still. So definitely look for the flat arcane skill damage on charms. Otherwise, you can get things like life, magic skill damage, large charms, resistances. All that stuff is really important. Cast speed, right? And then I also have a bunch of satanic charms listed in here as well that if you are able to pick up. Damien's Cage and Kanduk Jar probably being the strongest in terms of damage, just because the amount of skills that you get, and you get a bunch of pen. These two together, this combo is really strong. Another really good one is Steve, up to 75 all res, right? This would be really fantastic to find. Now for the big game, if you're not sure how to scale your character, I do have a bunch of different damage half fixes listed on here, just to give you an idea and descriptions on how certain things in the game work. So if you're not sure how to scale up your damage, this doc would be a really good read for you. In the mid game, I do have some example setups for AoE, right, with different gearing. Once again, for single target, it is difficult to show you how to get what your single target would be like for the Demonspawn, just because of bone fragments. His hitbox is really weird. Unfortunately, in the beta, I do not have access to anything other than normal, right? In order for me to do that, I would have to level all the way through normal, all the way through Nightmare, all the way through Hell, get all the way through Hell, get into Inferno, and then go to an actual boss that has a big enough life pool for me to show you the actual DPS. So it's a lot of work just to get one snapshot. So we're not going to do it. I will tell you, it is really good, and it is based on the the size of that monster. So for weapons in the mid game, we are going to be either looking to upgrade the rune words that we have, right? You want to try and get +4/+5 bases for those rune words. If not, Dawnbringer, I know it's an angelic. Dawnbringer can be really good. Stophax's Cooking Cleaver can be really good, because once again, we do get that burn for free through Impale. But this will be kind of like a back bar item that you would use for bossing. Archangel's Phase Blade, really solid item. I know it has paladin stuff on it, but you can get a bunch of flat skill damage, arcane skill damage, magic skill damage. That flat is doing much more than you think it's doing. And then St. Gabriel's Retribution and Riftmasters, these generally aren't going to be used on this character, but because they have such a large amount of arcane skill damage, these actually have some value. So if you end up dropping them, or you get lucky and find a Gabriel's, by all means, you could use one. For offhands, we have Celestial's Authority. This is pretty much mandatory in a lot of cases for quite a while, right? You get up to 60% arcane pen. That's over half of your arcane pen from one item. It's crazy. You also get sockets for res. You also get Celestial's Might, which will convert other elemental damage types into arcane at 125% conversion rate. So you get more out of those conversions, which is fantastic. Very good. Otherwise, you can find a base with plus skills for Justice. This can give you some juice with up to +9 skills. You get all resistance. You get magic skill damage. This can be a tanky good option, right? There's also Sumifim Perkel. This will give you up to 4 skills, a ton of faster cast rate. You also get resistances and up to 6 sockets. So this can be a really, really nice all-rounder until you can either find a nice Celestial's Authority. The drop rate, unfortunately, on Celestials has been nerfed back in Season 6. So it is going to be rather hard to drop. However, they have increased the chance of finding this item in its target zone by 80%, right? So if you are farming Cathedral, wow, I can't remember that. If you're farming a Cathedral, then you have a pretty decent chance when you get a heroic that it could be a Celestial's Authority. So that could be a way that you could, farm into one. Now, for your back bar, Crematorium's Pledge, giving you that extra damage to burning monsters, really nice. You also have things like Ancient Aegis, Gem of Crested Tower. Aegis can just be a good all-rounder. Gem of Crested Tower giving an absolute shitload of damage reduction. You can slam these and try and get some extra juice on them, right? Maybe you get a bunch of more life. Maybe you get some skills. You know, there's lots of things that can actually hit on those corruptions. So that could be a good option still as well. For helmets, if you don't have teleport yet, get a Side of the Gods. That'll help you teleport. Or if you would like to have Side of the Gods or teleport and use a different chest, completely up to you. Harlequin Veil gives you a bunch of damage reduction, Magic Find, that sort of thing. Delirium can give you up to 13 skills if you find a base. Gaze of Oblivion actually got buffed. I'll kind of pull this up here. So you get up to 6 skills. You get Shadow Burn damage, which in our case we don't particularly have on this build. There's not a lot of sources of Shadow Burn in Hero Siege, unfortunately. But you also get a bunch of arcane skill damage. So Gaze of the Oblivion, this is farmed from Luna, can be a really good option. And you have no other option than go for Curse. Also, new in Season 7 is the Endrixia helmet. This gives up to 40% extra damage to burning monsters. You will want a stock of this whenever you're doing bosses. So this can be, again, farmed from the Ruby Gardens boss Endrixia. And lastly, if you happen to farm Gabriel, right, or you're farming Gabriel and you drop a Dauntless Vision, this can be a decent helmet as well if it has some good rolls on it. You also have some enhanced sockets, which give you some extra juice in the build. Now, if you don't have a source of teleport yet, you're going to want to get an Enigma or use that site. Personally, I prefer to go to the Side of the Gods, and then I wear Gem King's Garb just because you get so much freaking skill damage on this Gem King. It's 120. That's a lot. That's like 2 Arcane Pumpkins worth of a lot, right? You also get 135% increased percent damage. You get 6 skills. This thing's crazy. Absolutely crazy. You could run the Enigma. You can get a +5 skill base. You'd have a +8 Enigma. That's still really strong with a bunch of other stats in it and the Magic Find. But I don't know. I personally would go for the Gem Kings. Either way, now there's also Azarius's. This can be a decent option just to be tanky. Sheep King's Hide was moved to Inferno mode. So if you have access to the auction house or you can go to Inferno, you could try to farm out Shiponia for a Sheep King's Hide. This is a good option as well. For gloves, Arcanums for Arcane Casters is generally a best in slot item. We already have Ominous Aura on this character, so you can't get rid of that. You can go like the Fighter Magi's, the Shadow Occultist. There's also St. Otto's gloves are actually our best in slot, but I understand those are, they're angelic item. They're going to be quite expensive. So yeah, it's really going to come down to these. I would say there's also Grasp with the Phoenix. You could wear those for the extra damage that's on them for bossing. Or you could honestly just, yeah, I think that's what I would probably still wear Arcanums. They're just so damn good. For boots, we have the Rogue Chaos Tower boots. These come from the Codex of Chaos, right? So you can get some Rogue Chaos Towers in there. These things are OP, right? And there's actually a couple of different ones that we can use here, right? So the Astral Roamers, these are what we're going to be using for our typical farming. You get a bunch of skills. You get flat damage. You get percent damage. You get up to 4 sockets. Absolutely insane. For Scorching Aura of Roamers, you get extra damage to burning monsters up to 50%. You also get a bunch of skills. You get the sockets. These are just as insane. And there's actually one more that's not here because we get Stasis on Impale, right? Stasis is going to imply Impale. So if when you're farming your Rogue Chaos Towers, if you happen to drop the Thunder Roamers, you could use those instead, right? Because they give extra damage to monsters inflicted by stasis. So you actually have a ton of options, on any of them that you drop, which is great, right? Otherwise, Fuma Flip-Flops can give you some skills, some juice, right? Ethers, if you make these in a +5 base and they roll arcane skills, that could be insane, right? Tons of skills on there, and then you get the pen, you have arcane magic skill damage. Pearlescent Dreams can offer you the resistances. Holy Aura can give you additional magic skill damage, really strong for the build. These would be probably what I would go for if I couldn't get any of these other options. For Belt, Rugal's is a very strong and tanky belt, right? This is going to give you A giant meat shield, which will give you a bunch of physical damage reduction, will make you feel very, very tanky wearing this belt. You also get 30 all resistances, no roll on that, it's just a flat 30, and you get a bunch of pen on top of the additional physical damage reductions. Like, it's a really good belt. Really, really good. Otherwise, you can find a Demonspawn Kunkalium and try and slam that for extra juice. There's also Sash of the Eternal Hatred. These are farmed from Uber Damien. These red rolls can change, so you can find like a minus enemy arcane resistance spell, or maybe you can get like +4 skills on here with that. That'd be insane. You can find mana, all sorts of things that you can find on these Sashes of Eternal Hatred. That could be a good option for you. If you have access to Inferno or the Auction House, Girdle is insane too, up to 2,000 life, right? Movement phasing, skills. You can find one with arcane skills. That'd be 6 arcane skills. Crazy. For rings, if you don't know, boss rings were moved to Inferno. So getting Arcanist rings is going to be a little difficult if you don't have access to Inferno. You can't get them at all. Or once again, the auction house, they will be expensive. But these are very, very good rings. Otherwise, what I would do is take my Coda Wedding Bands, my Elven Graces, my whatever other rings we have here in the budget, right? I would take these rings and I would slam them with crystals to try to get sockets. And then I would roll a pristine amethyst in it to get the skill damage, right? That could be really strong. There's also the Soulforge ring. You can slam Soulforge rings to get extra juice on them. That could be fantastic as well. And then there's also Zazels. You can drop a Zazels in Hell 1 through Hell 5. You could also buy one, right? Getting one with +3, it's going to be expensive. You would also have to go farm Mevius for the Soul Gem, which, you know what? Just slam Coda Wedding Bands. Don't worry about that. You'd have to go farm Mevius for the Soul Gems. So yeah, that could be an insane ring too. Like all these stats change to Arcane instead. For amulets, we have Philosopher's Stone. This goes up to 5 skills, a bunch of resistances. There's also Steve's Necklace, up to 100 attributes, tons of physical and magical damage reduction resistances. Thos Agony has been reworked and now gives you int into magic skill damage. It's a conversion amulet. You also get up to 75% intelligence. You get a socket, 3 skills. Insane. This is farmed from Almond Raw. This can be farmed in Hell 5. And last, we have Pendant of Eternity. This is just going to help you zoom around, right? You get that venerated 1 proc, tons of FCR. Go zoom, zoom for farming. Lastly, we have charms here. The most important charm, probably your Moon Shard, up to 35% enemy arcane resistance. This will really help with your clear. Otherwise, getting any of these charms in here will really, really help the build, right? Tablets being probably the most versatile. We can put chaos gems in there. You can put elemental gems in it. You can put umrunes in it if you need resistances. All that's fine and dandy. And then lastly, we have our Dragonheart charm. This comes from Andrixia in Hell 5 in the Ruby Gardens. She's a new boss. And this can drop this charm that gives us 50% magic skill damage. It also has a hole in it, so you could put, a chaos gem or whatever you want in there, as well as you get an execute. An 8.75% execute is kind of a big deal, actually, in this game. Okay, next we have endgame and min-maxing. Obviously, we can slam items. I'm not going to include anything that's slammed, right? We are going to show you some different example setups that are available here in the written guide. You can check these out and see what I was able to get with the dummies. Once again, really hard to simulate that DPS. Even right now with like this small ass target, I'm able to get 2.3 bill. That's kind of crazy. So yeah, just to give you an example. For relics, we have Bible, Triforce, Lost One, and Magic Mushroom. You could probably forego the Triforce later on. This only gives you 10% resistance anyway, and slot it in for anything else that you'd want on the build. I have some other utility options here. You go like cake or whatever, right? Get some additional life. For potions, a big one here is going to be our coffee container. Since we do have a source of burn, we're going to get increased damage to burning targets. This is free 99 for bossing and such. Otherwise, I really like to get the magic skill damage, cast rate. All those things are really just good quality life for the build. Next, we have chest augments. Longevity is going to be really good for our boner storm, right? And then monstrosity is going to be really good for the bone fragments, okay? So personally, I like monstrosity the most. I think it just provides the most utility here, but you could go longevity, right? Either one of those would be perfectly fine. For hero levels, I have an entire video talking about how to spec your hero level tree if you're not sure how to do that. For the most part, the hero level tree is really just dependent on what gear you have and what like certain strategies you want to follow based on what drops. And it's not just like a super powerhouse in the hero level tree, right? Generally speaking, most people try to rush the +2 skills, but there are many strats that you could do once again based on what you get. So definitely check that out if you're not really sure how the hero tree works. Next, we have glyphs. Glyphs offer no power to your character. They just give you utility. So if you're not sure how glyphs work or what glyphs are even in the game, definitely check out this video. There's a ton of information on that. For mercenaries, we're going to be using the Act 1 Night Merc. Why? Because mercenaries are just aura bots, and we just stack as much magic find on them as we possibly can. So in the gearing section, you're going to see just a bunch of items to get a bunch of magic find. The only one that is different is weapons. You can put an Aurora's Might on your Merc. This will give you Lunar Aura. This will give you a ton of resistances. A little bit annoying, though, until you have Teleport because your Merc doesn't stay with you. So just a heads up. And he might die to like Uber Reaper, or any of the bosses might just absolutely wreck him because he's in a bunch of Magifying gear. So you might have to get your Merc back a few times. Otherwise, just kind of look through here, right? There's a ton of different options, and you're going to stack Istrunes and everything to get as much magic find on your Merc as you can. Can't tell you how many people in the early game do not kit out their Mercs. They care about their own character's gear more than they care about their Merc, and they never find items, right? It's because their Merc doesn't have magic find. Your Merc's magic find applies to you. All right, for loot filters, I do in the document have this section that explains how to select a highlight filter and a loot filter, right? Gives you a description on how that works. For starter filters, I do have a video and a written guide that will help you with creating your own loot filter for Season 7. I cannot give you one. There's no way that I can make one in the Season 7 beta or the Season 6 client. You cannot make one in the Season 6 client. It will not move over to Season 7. Right before Season 7 starts, about an hour before the patch will go live, you'll be able to log into the game before the servers go up. Then you can go into local and create your filter really quickly. So that's what this explains, and I have an entire written guide available here for you that you can find exactly the archetype that you are going to be playing and what you should put on your items in order for you to get the most out of your league start. All right. And then once we actually officially start the season, day one, I will be able to finally make some in-game filters. And I will either have those available on the website, or if I can't get them on the website in time, I will post them here on all of these documents. That way you guys will have them for your runs, right? And lastly, if you're a new player, I do have a bunch of helpful resources in here. I have a 2.5-hour beginner guide with timestamps all over it. That way you can find exactly the information that you need for, whatever you might come across while you're playing the game. Also, if you don't know what's going on, the Season 7 patch notes are available in here, so you can check out other class balancing, what's new for the season, all that sort of stuff. So with that being said, that's going to wrap up our Boner Demonspawn coming in Season 7, right? That is going to be available on June 6th. That's next Friday. We're going to be streaming it live at twitch.tv/Graxy_TV. Come by, say hi. It's going to be a ton of fun. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video.